I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and today we'd like to talk to you about being divinely centered. In New Thought metaphysical philosophy, we believe that we live in our minds and not in the world. And what that means simply is that the way that we think about circumstances and situations determines the quality of our life to a great and wonderful extent. And we are all divinely centered, aren't we?
Well, we are indeed, and we just have to realize that we are, because we are. And when we don't have to be. It's not religiosity; it's spirituality. It's feeling our oneness with the divine, and it wouldn't matter what religion we are or if we don't profess to have one. If we feel that oneness with a higher power, then it gives added strength to our lives. And as we're thinking in a one-pointed way, then we're more centered. And so as we're centered in the spiritual aspect of being, we're more comfortable with ourselves and more happy and more accepting of the changes in life.
Mhm. The whole idea of being centered, I think, is sometimes foreign to especially those of us who have come from a traditional Western background. Although more people involved in meditation and reflection and discernment and the thought processes of the Eastern and Western teachings coming together do explore ideas and concepts of being centered. But being centered is really just is a concept that is not new at all to any faith tradition. And as you said, it crosses all of the denominational and faith tradition lines, and it allows us to be at one-ment or at one place in our awareness. And I think that is a different way of thinking for a lot of people. And so maybe for a few minutes we could talk just about being centered, and even not from the spiritual standpoint, but being centered from a mental standpoint. It has to do with being balanced, doesn't it?
Yes, it is. And balance is a good definition of that, because as we're balanced, we're comfortable with ourselves and comfortable with our environment, comfortable with the people around us. And then what does that signify? Being non-judgmental. So as we're non-judgmental, we're far more happy and comfortable. And so many of us have to look out to see who's doing what and that they shouldn't do. But if we just let everything flow and see that, and not be judgmental, not think that so-and-so should do anything different. We're not giving it a thought, but just accepting. And that doesn't mean that in the workplace people have to just let everything go helter-skelter. That, of course, is not what we're saying. But it's saying that we allow people freedom to be themselves and to express themselves in a normal way. And then we're allowing ourselves then that very same privilege. And we know that life is change, and it's regardless of who or what or where we are, life is change. So we can face those changes more easily, comfortably, and spontaneously and productively.
Mm-hmm. A beginning point is to understand that we're all changing all the time, whether we like it or not. And of course, some of us don't like change. And of course, most of us don't like change. And it takes a while to get used to the concept and the idea of change in and of itself. But once we realize that change is a part of the human condition, it's part of the mental condition, it's part of the spiritual condition, it's part of the physical condition, it's part of every relationship, then we begin to explore ways of dealing with that change. And certainly being centered or balanced is a good way to begin to deal with all of those aspects and dimensions of our lives.
Yes, and then when we accept whatever comes. I know a young man who, he and his wife have a baby who's about 6 months old or so, and his work wasn't going too well, and he needed to change jobs. So they decided instead of having a nanny come in all the time, he would stay with the baby for a time. And he would wait between jobs. And a lot of people would say, well, how foolish. He needs to get on with his career. Well, it actually is not so foolish. After all, women stay home with the babies all the time and always have. So it doesn't, what is the difference? He can put his career on hold for a short time. And it was his idea, and he wanted to do that. And he wanted to spend more time with that child. And so that's one example of how we can all look at our own lives and see where there's things happening that we do that we wouldn't even think of if we'd think as if we're in our right minds. But if we're on the spur of the moment, we'll make an abrupt change. So in other words, it's very exciting and makes life more wonderful and more fulfilling if we're open to accept the new in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Openness, there's a concept whose time has come. Openness in a as you said at the beginning of the program, in a non-judgmental way to other people, circumstances, situations, to cultures. One of the wonderful things that's happened on planet Earth is that we've come to know people that we never would have known. This generation is a wonderful generation. This is such a magnificent time to be alive, and yet there are those, of course, who would disagree with us, and we have no problem with those who disagree with us, but we believe that this is a wonderful and positive time to be alive and to be experiencing life with all of its vibrancy and all of its joy. And this aspect of being divinely centered, or being centered in a non-judgmental awareness of our changing world, our changing environment, our changing spirituality and dimensions of spirituality, make it such a fruitful and vibrant time.
Yes, and again, it doesn't matter what people's religious persuasion or home is, but it's the spirituality aspect of being. And I'd just like to suggest that whoever is listening to our conversation think about their own relationship with the divine, because we each have our individualistic relationship with that which is divine, because we are a part of Creator God. And that flame of God is within every person. And it might just be a spark in some, there I'm being judgmental, but it's there in every person. So we can just, each person can know the divine within themselves, accept it, acknowledge it, and be grateful for it and express gratitude for it. And as we accept that we are a part of Creator God, then it puts a much greater importance into our lives, into the life of every person. And we value other people far more, and we value individuality more. And that's one of the things we need to accept totally, is that each person is an individual, and each individual has their own way, their own type of thinking, their own way of doing things, and we can cherish that we're different, and cherish those differences.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And cherishing those differences has to do with respecting and not, I think I had a conversation just this past week with a group of people. And we're talking, happened that we were talking about religion, but it really didn't matter whether it would be religion or any other aspect of life. And we were talking about how wonderful and important it is for us to get beyond even the concept and the idea of tolerance. For a long time, we talked about tolerating people, and something that doesn't quite get to the core of it. I don't want people to tolerate me. I want people to understand me, and I want people to allow me the freedom to be who and what I am. And of course, in unity and in New Thought and in metaphysics and in our counseling work, in our spiritual work, in all aspects, in our lectures and talks that you and I give, and the interactions that we have with people, we're constantly reaching deep within people to allow them to be what they are and honoring that which they are, rather than telling them what it is we believe they should be. And of course, so many of us have come out of backgrounds, whether it be political or religious or from the standpoint of family or work or relationships, where we've decided how things should be. And in today's environment, we've come to a point in time of understanding that we don't need to just tolerate. We don't just need to come to a point of tolerance, but if we can come to a point of dialogue where we respect each other in a positive and wonderful way, we become divinely centered, and we become centered with the divine, and the divine comes forth from us and unites us one with another. It doesn't mean we're all the same, and it doesn't mean we all have to be the same. And as a matter of fact, it's magnificent that we're not all the same. And that issue of individuality in all aspects of life, and individual expression, allowing and honoring the diversity that exists within persons and faiths and cultures and traditions, is tremendously important.
Yes, and the most important part, I believe, is acceptance. If we accept that people are different, if we accept that we value that difference, if we accept that we will look forward to see what is going to be proposed or projected, then it gives the other person the freedom to express themselves fully. Where if there's not that acceptance, then they don't have the freedom to express fully. And so that's what children do. I think you mentioned children earlier, that children accept whatever you say, if they're well-balanced. Children, and most are, it's the adults around children that keep them from seeming to be balanced, because the adults say, do this and do that, and don't do this and don't do that. Where if we just let a child flow and be themselves, it is so wonderful and so beautiful. Well, it's not just the children that we need to allow that privilege, but with every person. And that doesn't mean that people don't have to follow rules and regulations and go along with plans. That's not the same thing. But it's just it's a way of accepting people, that they feel they're accepted and their worth is noted.
Mm-hmm. And then we are divinely centered, and we operate from that point which unifies us all. And that unity with the divine, and that unity consciousness and awareness, is so fundamental to what this program and what the ideas and concepts we share are all about.
Yes, because then people truly do live. They exercise confident living, because as we give other people the privilege to be themselves, then we assume that we have that same right, and we allow ourselves that same privilege. And I know I'm from a rather large family, and as I was growing up, our parents were always probably nervous that we were going to do horrible things, who knows, but we were more restricted. And I think large families have greater restrictions on the children than smaller families, because they can afford to. They have to have blanket rules and overall policies, or it's going to all fall apart. But then we would be more concerned about what the neighbors would think, be more concerned about what other people would think. Well, the children today are not put in that position nearly as much, and it's a good thing that they're not. And that's not saying let them go berserk and let them do as they please, but it's just allowing them to come from that inner core within themselves, so that they're functioning from their own individuality aspect of being.
Mm-hmm. And being centered and being whole and being balanced. We'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you some information.
Mike and Iris invite you to be with them every Sunday morning at the magnificent and historic Scottish Rite Cathedral, located at 855 Elm Avenue in Long Beach. Our worship service and Sunday school begin at 11 a.m. Angelus Unity Cathedral Church at the Scottish Rite Cathedral meets in the only true cathedral church located in the city of Long Beach. This magnificent and grand building is a true architectural jewel. The service begins at 11 a.m. and there is Sunday school for the children. There is always plenty of free parking in the cathedral lot. Mike and Iris look forward to meeting you and your family this Sunday. People of all faiths are always welcome. We will be saving you a seat this Sunday at Angelus Unity Cathedral Church at the Scottish Rite Cathedral. You will be warmly welcomed.
It is a wonderful and magnificent time to be alive, contrary to what others may say. And we really have that firm belief that by being divinely centered, we can have the joy of living, and we can live in a very confident and fulfilling way.
And when we think in that fashion, we truly are living that life. And I can remember my dad saying 10, 15 years ago, don't let anyone tell you the good old days are past. We are living in the good old days. And that's true. And in a sense that he said that in a greater, simple way. But that's true when we think in simple ways and accept life as being a wonderful, glorious adventure experience. Then we don't worry about the past and we don't worry about the future. We're just enjoying the present. And one thing we teach is keeping our consciousness in present time. And that's what it amounts to, isn't it?
Absolutely. So important that we understand how vital it is to stay in this present moment and to be centered in the moment where we find ourselves, and to know that at that very moment we are not alone, we're with others, and that we are divinely surrounded by infinite intelligence, by limitless potential, by the dynamic of health, despite appearances to the contrary, abundance even in the face of poverty sometimes. And that whole idea of looking at life in a positive and affirmative way is so much a part of our teaching and so much a part of what you and I have devoted our life and ministry to. And this is at its core understanding the reality that every one of us is divinely centered, no matter where we are in life. And we're all at different points and different places, and that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yes, of course it is. And we are each at different points at different times in our life. And we never know when something new and different occurs. And when it does, we need to greet it instead of dread it. And we need to accept it as good. And those people who do are the people who are more happy and more productive in their lives, because then they're not putting the emphasis on the past and they're not dreading the future. And of course, everyone on earth agrees that fear is so constant today in the world, and so many people are so fearful. And one thing about that is because communication is so more instant now, and people have more information given to them. But I wouldn't say that gives knowledge, would you?
No.
No, it doesn't give them knowledge. It just gives them more information. And so if they clutter with all that information and live in the past and dread the future, then we're not going to be going anywhere. So we need to, and when we're living in a divinely inspired way, then we are keeping our consciousness in present time, and we're letting the past be just that, past. And we're not trying to figure out the future, or dread it, or try over much to program it, but just live each day in a fulfilling way. And then we know that tomorrow takes care of itself. And I think there's poems about that. The birds of the field don't worry about tomorrow, and so forth. Because, and we need to do that for ourselves. That's the gift that we can give ourselves.
And as we give ourselves that gift, we become a magnet to those around us. And of course, we know that there are a lot of psychological studies have been done about the fact that happy and joyful people make good companions. And so people like to be around happy and joyful people. And yet so many in today's world are less than happy and are fearful and are challenged by difficulties. And that's not at all to say, and in this program, we spend a lot of time talking about the fact that difficulties will come into every life. They've come to yours, they've come to mine, they'll come to everyone's. And if our lives are good now, just wait a few minutes. The bad times will come back again. But that doesn't mean that we have to stay in them. And if we understand and claim the reality of who and what we are as divine beings and physical beings and mental beings and spiritual beings, and if we're able to put ourselves, mind, body, and soul together as whole and holy beings, we can be divinely centered in the present moment, and we can deal with anything that comes and anything that we face and anything that we face as in the world, anything that we face in our communities, anything that we face in our families and relationships, and anything that we face internally. But we really do need to draw upon the reality of understanding that we are divinely centered and can be divinely centered, whether we're aware of it or not. And we spend some time talking about the conscious and unconscious mind. And so many of us think that things just happen and we have no control over them. But we always have control over the way that we think about things, don't we?
Yes, indeed. And you have in the past more than once talked about Job, has been your focus on Sunday morning. And that which I feared has come upon me. Well, that's what you just now said. Mm-hmm. That which I feared has come upon me. And if we do fear anything, then we draw it to us, because thoughts are like magnets. They draw to themselves that which we anticipate, or that which we dread, or whatever emotion we put into it, then that's what we're doing. We're accumulating that energy. And then if we keep our thoughts open and free of negativity, then we live that kind of life more fully. And I know the more despondent a person is, the more troubled they are, the less apt they are to accept that, yes, what we're just now saying is true. But if we could just collect ourselves and be centered enough to put our thoughts in order and plan our thoughts and plan our lives and plan our how we're going to live each day, then we can see that makes a difference. And science has given us such wonderful information. And one thing it's taught us is that, yes, this is true. It's like if you take a magnet and put it under a piece of glass, and then put a lot of filings on top of it, then that magnet will draw it all to itself. Mm-hmm. And that's one excellent example of how our thoughts are just that powerful. And our thoughts will draw all that to us. So then it behooves us to be more free in our thinking. And again, the more troubled a person is, the less apt they are to accept this as true. But a good start would be to just do something different. Go to a movie, turn on the TV on something foolish that's a movie or something like that, not the news, not something that's going to make them more worried, or to go for a walk. And we each have our own different ways of doing it. I would never go to a movie or turn on the TV personally, but I know many people who are comforted in that way. So we have to know ourselves. And for me, it would be to go for a walk and just free my mind of anything except what's around me, the sky and so forth.
Mm-hmm. And what works for Iris or what works for Mike may not work for John or Mary or Martha. And I think so often we think that especially psychologists and counselors and clergy and people in the helping professions, doctors and such, are going to give us some magic pill, and we want that pill. And if we could just take that pill, we'll be okay. And in some cases, of course, pills are wonderful, and we're not demeaning pills at all. But it is so important for us to understand that what works for one doesn't work for all. And so whatever it is that works for us, to be divinely centered and to be able to cope with the circumstances and situations and changes in life is that which we should do. You and I believe in healing and all aspects of life, and many methodologies of healing work, and many methodologies of treatment work, and we know that to be true.
Oh, that's right, and we've seen it happen. As we do the spiritual healing work, we say God does the healing. The healing comes from God, and indeed it does. We channel the energy, but a lot of people wouldn't think of resorting to have someone else channel that energy for them. And some people can channel the healing energy better than others, but all can do it, and children particularly can do that. And we sell our children short in not giving them more credit that they're able to do things that, such as healing. And when a child just speaks to you and caresses, then they're sending out such a lovely energy. Well, we all send out that lovely energy when we're in that modality of thinking. And so we owe it to our fellow man to be more open, to be more flexible and accepting.
And be more divinely centered. And if we claim that divine centering, we then are able to deal with circumstances and situations. And you and I have dealt with a lot of different challenges in our own lives and in the lives of others. And in our work and ministry and counseling, so often we've done a lot of work, both of us have, with people at end-of-life experiences. And how often, you and I have spoken and shared and talked about how sometimes people are healed and sometimes they're not of the physical ailment that challenges them, but so many positive, wonderful things come about by allowing people to be divinely centered in the experience. And wherever we are is where we are. If, as I say so often, if you're depressed, you're depressed. If you're sad, you're sad. If you're sick, you're sick. And so accept that fact, which has to do with being in the present moment. Don't deny anything of the present moment, but we always have the ability to change and change our way of thinking and allow that circumstance and situation to bless us or touch us in a positive and affirmative way.
And allow other people that same privilege. I can remember I made ward rounds for a couple of so years at a local hospital, and there was an older lady who said to me when I entered her room, she said, "Would you pray to that Jesus of yours that I be able to be released to die now?" And I said, "Why on earth would you ask that?" And she says, "Well, I'm Jewish, you know." And I said, "Well, no, I mean, why do you want to die now?" Because she looked her health looked viable. And she said, "I'm 93 years old. I've had 4 major surgeries, and the doctors tell me I have to have another major surgery. And I think it's my time to go instead. I don't want to endure that again." And I said, "That makes sense. You pray verbally first, and then I'll pray verbally." So we did. And then at 7 that evening, she died. And I think that's such a beautiful story because it shows that lady was captain of her soul and in charge of her life. And she was functioning to me from that divine within of ordering her life the way she wanted it to go. And probably it was her chronological time to go. And she was so in touch with the inner that she realized it's her chronological time to go.
And she was ready, and she went, and she let go, and she was divinely centered in the process. And so it's time for us now to go. And so we hope that this program has provided you with information that's been useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.